I'm Arya Schwartz alongside Rachel Galligan, and welcome to the Winsidr Show, where it's all about the W. There is so much going on in this league at this moment. We're over halfway through the season. We're almost at the All-Star break, and there is hot topics to discuss, namely power rankings and Rookie of the Year. Welcome back to the show. So excited to be back here with my co-host, Rachel Galligan. Rachel, we are at a pivotal moment in the WNBA season. I feel like we're at that point where, the top teams, those games are that much more important. The teams on the bubble, the games are that much more important. And the teams that are at the bottom end, I just feel like there's so much more gravity to each game. And specifically to our topic of today, the power rankings. I mean, you look at where Seattle and Vegas are sitting in the standings, and you can talk in the power rankings, but where they're sitting in the standings, they're just on the doorstep of those other top teams. There was a little bit of a gap earlier in the season, and they've kind of closed that gap. And now it just feels like the excitement's just building and building and building. When I say WNBA power rankings right now, like, what's the first thing that comes to your mind, I guess?
How wide open it is. I said it earlier on our show with Bleacher Report that we did, shameless plug. It feels very like this wasn't a great week for the top teams. I guess you could say the Connecticut Sun have won 3 in a row, but they're coming off kind of a little bit of a dip down. It wasn't like a massive dip. No one expected this team to go undefeated all season long, but you had the Liberty who lost. The Las Vegas Aces that lost to the Sparks, who seem to have their number, which is just wild, beating them 3 out of the last 4 times. Liberty losing to the Fever. Minnesota, I don't want to say they feel like they're flailing a little bit, but what they've lost like 3 of their last 4. I'm not looking at the actual standing or, the schedule right now, but, Fee being hurt and, a couple really like close losses there. Seattle, I think I'm just waiting to see more. I know that there's star power on this team. I know that this team is capable of beating, pretty much anyone any given night on paper. Like, you look at them and you're like, okay, they've got the star power, but I just don't think that collectively and some individuals on that team have peaked yet in terms of their production. And so, I mean, just talking about that metric, and then we could add the Phoenix Mercury, which is a whole other conversation. I mean, they've won 2 in a row, but this team, you just never know what you're going to get with them. It's really like a flip of a coin for me. So I do kind of have, that 1 through 5, New York, Connecticut, Minnesota, Seattle, Las Vegas. I think if I had to, again, outside of Connecticut, and it's not like you're wowed too much when you watch Connecticut because they play such a brand of basketball where they're grinding out wins. They're tough as hell to go against. There's no question about that. But I feel like the team that has wowed me the most in the last week has been the Las Vegas Aces. Granted, had they not lost that game against the Sparks, which was a great game, by the way, this would sound a hell of a lot different. But I think the Aces, probably out of everyone that we've just kind of quickly, kind of dived into, to me, I think are the scariest, maybe because they do have that nod as defending champs, but they're not quite to that 100%. I think they're definitely trending that way, though.
Yeah, that's really what it seems. I mean, I look at it, even though power rankings are in a snap moment type situation, I like to look at last 10 games. When you look at the last 10 games, the hottest teams in the league are the Las Vegas Aces and the New York Liberty, both sitting at 8-2. And then you got the rest of the top 5 with Seattle, Minnesota, Connecticut sitting at 7-3. So look, obviously, one win here, one loss here really impacts our perspective of these teams, because if Vegas doesn't lose to LA, like you were saying, they're sitting at 9-1 and they jump up even higher in those rankings. And you're essentially tied with Minnesota at that point. Different amount of games played, but you're essentially tied with Minnesota at that point. I agree with you. I think looking at this, this is the first time this season that I've looked at the power rankings less as a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 12, and more so in a tier system, which is something we were so used to doing in previous years of recent memory, because you had that domination. It was the aces, and then it was everybody else. It was the aces, and then these other teams that on a given night could pull off the dub, but aren't consistent. And then you had, so on and so forth. And I'm looking at it and I'm going, okay, this is going to sound crazy, Rachel. I did not prep you for this. Feel free to disagree, call me ridiculous, whatever. Well, Connecticut is definitely, in my opinion, sitting at number one. If I'm looking at this from a power ranking perspective of overall in terms of playoffs, end of the season, I'm not saying power rankings. If there's two different types of power rankings in my mind. There's power rankings of now, and then there's power rankings of the season, right? Does that make sense? Kind of, not really. Fine.
I guess. I get what you're saying.
Because Connecticut's the hottest team right now, but I personally have absolutely no faith. There's no way if the regular season ended today, there's no way I can put Connecticut, knowing what I know over the past years, as the number one team. That's just me. So yes, today, right now, in the W, the hottest team, Connecticut Sun, arguably. But am I going to put them in the end of the season type? No, because like you were saying, the scare, that ability to have that edge and compete for a championship, to me, it's New York and Vegas. And I would argue that Minnesota's in that, because even in the games they've lost, except for, one of those early season games, there's been that consistency and that ready for the moment feel to the games, where I haven't seen that in Seattle. Connecticut has that, but we've seen time and time again in the playoffs that doesn't exist. And then we know Vegas has that, and we know New York has that. So I guess I kind of have it as the top teams, Connecticut, the teams that I view as on that same level, almost I would put more money on them to win the championship. That's Vegas, Minnesota, and New York. And then Seattle's that team that look, you're doing enough to be in the conversation. So I'll discuss the conversation with you. But offensively, it's not there yet. And honestly, I haven't seen it there for a full game yet.
Yeah, you just feel like they're missing something. They're missing an element on this team in order to truly be in that top three conversation. But again, maybe it's still early enough. Maybe this team has yet to play their best basketball. Very possible. But they're going to need Jewel Lloyd to produce at a more consistent rate. I want to flip it a little bit. Everyone talks about the top teams in the power rankings.
Okay.
Let's talk about the lower portion of this league right now. Let's give some love to the Dallas Wings, the Washington Mystics, the LA Sparks, the Atlanta Dream, Chicago Sky, Indiana Fever. I mean, we're here. Let's just talk about it. I feel, again, I guess it's a reverse power ranking. In your opinion, who is the worst team in the league right now? Because if you look at the rankings, it's the Dallas Wings, which Dallas Wings and Mystics are tied at 5 and 17. I don't know that anybody would have put money down before the season started that Dallas would be in this position right now. That to me is the most shocking and the most. I mean, I remember we were talking about this before the season started. This is a make or break year for Dallas. Obviously, not having Sabali on the court is a major loss. Obviously, they went through some injuries. They didn't have Natasha Howard. Maddie Siegrist is still out. I mean, say what you want. I'm happy that Siegrist is getting minutes and she's impacting this team. But when push comes to shove, the star power that's moving the needle, her not being out right now really should not impact that much whether they're being competitive in games and winning games. They've got Natasha Howard, who is really coming on. Arike, who obviously we can talk about her offensive skill set. But let's talk just Dallas Wings, your overall thoughts. I'm surprised. I don't want to say surprised. I'm surprised because the Dallas Wings were so dynamic last year. They were so fun to watch. They had so many pieces of that team that could go out and so many weapons. Is the fact that they don't have Sabali out there, is that what's going on here? Or is it something deeper in your mind?
I think it's a combination of two things. Like if we want to examine them in a holistic sense, there's some major issues at the top. If we want to examine them from a closer perspective and not necessarily point fingers, we can look at this from the easy perspective of your best player is out with Sabali, but you have other top talent. We've said this. It sounds like we say it every episode. To be a championship contender in this league, you need to have a three-headed monster or more. They had that. with Howard, Arike, and Sabali. When you lose one, not a big deal. The team can step it up, even if it's your best player. You can ride that wave for a little bit. When you lose your arguably second best player, yeah, I said it, arguably your second best player in Natasha Howard for a while, okay, things are starting to get worse. But the part that really turned it into a unmanageable snowball going down a hill, for me at least, is how this roster was made up coming into the season. This roster, you knew you were going to be out Sabali, right? You knew one more injury could cause this to get to an uncontrollable level, but yet you decided to put so much faith in these unproven rookies, so much faith in these players that haven't shown consistency. And to me, it's like, okay, if you're going to lose talent, then you need consistency. And this team decided to not bring Sims back. This team decided to make a move on Crystal Dangerfield. This team decided that, throughout the history of recent years, that they were going to move on from shooters that produced at a high clip for this team and kind of double down on the bigs, but yet not necessarily play that style of ball. So I think it's a combination of three things. It's a combination of star power going down. It's a combination of who is the makeup of this roster. And it's a combination of, is the makeup of this roster, even when it's at its best, built around their stars to produce at a positive, high, competitive at a championship level? Because that's what Minnesota did. Minnesota built it around Fee. So it's maybe they don't have the star power, but they have the depth and they have the style of play to fit around their best player. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm looking at numbers, and I'm at the end of the day, so you can look at stats, you can analyze, analytics from time to time. But when I watch this team, I struggle a little bit with, I remember the game when they played the Phoenix Mercury, and it was like the parting of the Red Sea every time Kalia Copper got the ball and was just ripping it to the rim, and for a team with a coach who is supposed to be so defensive minded in LT, they should be able to rely on some defensive schemes, or at least, you've got some rim protection. I think one of the biggest issues with this team, outside of just at times defensively they look completely out of sorts, is they can't take care of the basketball. They lead the league in turnovers, which is surprising. I agree with you. Going into this off season, we were looking at free agency. When we got to the end of free agency, it was like, man, I really felt like this season was make or break. Are the Dallas Wings for real? Are they going to build off those momentum that it feels like they've been trending with the last couple of years? Or is it just going to completely, are you a pretender or are you for real? And it's just, I don't know. It's shocking that to me, out of everything, we could have predicted a lot of things happening on this board right now. Maybe outside of Vegas losing 7 or 8 early on in the season, but that's not as shocking to me. This is the Dallas Wings are the most shocking, just from a standpoint of the momentum, and Odyssey Sims gets added to a hardship contract, which that should have happened in the offseason. But again, you've got your front office who's focused on all of these rookies who are unproven. And yeah, we've talked about them enough ad nauseum, but that's disappointing to me. The Dallas Wings, where they're at, it will be interesting. Can they? What is the future, like with Sabali after the Olympic break? Being able to be cleared and come back, and does she even play this year? Is it even worth it? Does it really serve this team to be in the lottery? Good Lord, they've got to be able to build in free agency at this point.
Yeah.
So anyway, a lot of things to look at there. What about the Washington Mystics? You're right in the backyard, so why don't you take this one?
Well, no. So that's the interesting thing, because you look at the Mystics, and I don't want to say, look, they've had injury issues also, and I don't think I would necessarily look at the Mystics and say they are playing better than their roster is, right?
I think this was expected. This is where kind of people imagined they would be a lottery team this year.
Well, they kind of openly admitted it, which you got to give respect to the team for doing that. My thing is, if we're talking about who are the worst teams in the league, or who is the worst team in the league currently, it's interesting to look at it, because it's okay, Dallas is doing about as bad as we thought, worst case scenario. Washington is not doing as bad as worst case scenario. LA Sparks, even though they went on a 9-game losing streak and now are 1-9, I don't even know if I would look at it as worst case scenario for these teams. So it's like, you know what I mean? Like saying worst team is hard for me, even though I love the topic, you know me. The Washington Mystics are a tough one because they're just not a roster, in my mind, a roster built to succeed. They are a roster, I often say this, that it looks like there's 5 players playing together, not a team. The Mystics look like a roster of individual players put together. There looks to be no method to the madness. Look, I get it. There's been some key injuries, but,
I will tell you, yeah, I mean, not having Austin, Shakira Austin is such a major blow. I mean, she's such a phenomenal, what's she in, year 2 player in this league? Is it only 2 years? I don't even know.
No, I think this would be her 3rd, but because of the injury, basically she's been injured for most of her career at this point, which is a concern. The one positive that I will say from the Washington Mystics is the Aaliyah Edwards season is a great season, under the radar, great development. Look, Dolson's not going to be there much longer. Can you have that 1-2 pairing of Edwards and Austin? That's a fun one. You pair that with Atkins. Okay, now you got 3 good players. Once you got 3 good players, you can start kind of moving towards something else. They still have some obvious holes, but I do think that they have some pieces that in free agency, if they can convince some players to come in the offseason, if they get a nice draft pick this year or the next year, I think they can definitely make some moves. But they're doing look, Washington Mystics are doing what they're supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
Get a couple wins, not go on a 20-game losing streak, and get their young players. Exactly.
Develop your young players. Shout out to Van Loo. She's so fun to watch, in my opinion. Belgium's going to be a problem in the Olympics. Okay, let's talk about the Sparks. The injury to Cam Brink, that's disappointing, because kind of a similar situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Didn't expect to be a great year for LA. This was very much a rebuilding year. This was a developmental year. Cam Brink going down is one of the most disheartening, sad bits of news that's come from this season, because this was really going to be her chance. She was doing a great job, in the first half of the season. And so, but I gotta give him some credit. It was fun to watch him against Vegas, and you have to really tip your hat to De'Erica Hamby and the season she's having, the leader that she's become with this team, and the motor that she plays with. I don't know. I feel like LA is very much going to be a work in progress for a couple of years here. The question's always going to be, can they rebuild in free agency? Can they attract top free agents, or are they going to have to redo it through the draft? But anyway, they are doing exactly what they need to do. Atlanta Dream. Let's talk Atlanta Dream. Not to gloss over LA too much, but
no, because LA is one of those teams where it's like, look, as bad as it is that your star draft pick, right, got injured, goes down, honestly might be good for a player who's had some historical foul trouble, assuming no one should get injured ever. The ability to sit back and watch the game a little bit might be helpful for a young player that needs to grow when it comes to certain aspects that honestly you could argue are very mental aspects of the game. Physically, she is gifted beyond belief and is going to excel in this league. But there's some mental aspects that you really need to focus on. And
important to know what Rickea Jackson's doing.
Oh, yeah.
Really, really, that's the story there. I mean, Rickea Jackson, she has to be relied upon. She has to produce night in and night out. She's second in the team in scoring, 11 points per game. Really, you've noticed probably in the last week or so in particular, just her level of play and how comfortable she is on the floor has taken another jump. And we know Rickea Jackson can go get her own shot. She can create for herself, really good in the mid-range. I mean, she's a player that we're going to be talking about, in my opinion, in this league for a long time. So another bright spot for the Sparks. Okay, Dream, go ahead.
No, the Atlanta Dream are a tough one, because I think everyone would very easily say that this season has been a disappointment for them. This was kind of not a make or break season in the terms of Dallas Wings, but a make or break season in the terms of we've seen them take those baby steps. Okay, you've made more additions to this team. You added a former superstar, a historic legend in this league who's still trying to win a championship in Tina Charles. You added a Jordan Canada. Yes, she's been out a lot with injury. And the team just wasn't producing at that oomph. right? Like there was nothing exciting. Ryan Howard was lighting it up from three, was doing some fun plays and whatnot, but this team was just underwhelming. And then Ryan Howard goes down with injury. And since then, the team has just not looked great. They got that win and then have just kind of fallen off since. They've lost 4 in a row. They're 2-8 in their last 10. They're 7-13 on the season, on that playoff bubble, just a game behind Chicago for that 8th seed. Look, let's be blunt about it. We're sitting at past the halfway point, and they're at the halfway point exactly. This team is 7-13. They're not in the playoffs. This is a disappointing half to the season. Now, as we know, Rachel, it's just like a basketball game. You get in halftime, you give that pep talk, and you start kicking some behind in the second half. They need to do that. They're in a much better place than LA, Washington, or Dallas in terms of those teams essentially have no give to beat 500 for the rest of the season, whereas Atlanta has some give. So I'm sitting here and I'm going,
Howard's got to be on the floor. I mean, I can't stress enough, when she's not out there, this team, the dynamic of this team is completely different. You can't make up. I mean, her production, and that's how this team is built. I mean, she's the face of this franchise, arguably, one of the best player on this team. And so that's just a massive blow. It'll be interesting, that timeline when she comes back and how this team can potentially maybe string something together, get some momentum here in the second half of the season. When do they play next? Let me pull up their schedule real quick.
I mean, but that's the thing is, like, they can legitimately, they play the Sky on Wednesday at a midday game, which is going to be an interesting one with those teams both on that playoff bubble right there.
Yeah.
The thing with Atlanta is, honestly, offensively, there just seems to be no identity. And I know, Rachel, you talk about this a lot, being a college person. Like, college basketball teams create identity because the seasons are longer. You have more time together. You're able to build something.
Yeah.
I think this year, the team that obviously we talk about Indiana, we will in a moment, but the Atlanta Dream just seemed to lack identity. And so that's how I would sum it up. You want to talk Chicago Sky, your hometown team? Chicago Sky. They're scary, man. They're scary.
They're in my opinion, they're one of the scariest teams in this league. And you can't say enough about how and I said it a month ago, and I wasn't sure how I was going to feel a month later, but I still feel the same. This team is one of the most like, when I see this team on the schedule, I'm like, oh, I'm watching that one tonight. Like, I'm drawn to this team. I want to watch them play. I think Witherspoon's doing a really, really good job, and I think that she's got herself a roster that they mesh well together. They've taken on the identity of their coach. I think you've got Camila Cardoso, Angel Reese. I mean, unbelievable. Obviously up here in the Rookie of the Year conversation. Then you've got Kennedy Carter. Who knew Teresa Witherspoon would be the Kennedy Carter whisperer, being able to, kind of wrap her arms around her and give her the support and the situation to thrive. I mean, Kennedy Carter is an absolute star in this league. Arguably one of the top offensive powerhouses in this league in terms of her ability to go create a shot, go get a shot, and put up massive numbers. And so, I mean, you've got that. There's a lot of Kennedy Carter's not a rookie, but just for the start of her career in the WNBA, it almost feels like, she's still new to this league and finding her footing. And so it's fun to watch this team. And then you throw a player like Marina Mabrey out there who can do what she can do in terms of getting hot from deep and taking on that edge that I think she carries with her. I think her teammates get that chip on her shoulder a little bit that Mabrey plays with. And I love that about her. It's one of my favorite aspects of Mabrey. But yeah, they're scary. They're scary because they could lose any given night and they could go beat anyone in the league any given night, just because they don't have any fear and they don't care. They're just going to go at you over and over and over and over. And that's why I love watching this team. They've got that edge. They've got that chip. They've got that fire. You've got some personalities on this team that just mesh really well together. But they're still rebuilding. They're still coming together. They're still going through growing pains as a young team with a new coach. But yeah, go ahead. What are your thoughts about Chicago? I love watching this team play.
I agree. I think you summed it up great. I mean, this team is a team that had nothing to lose. They're playing with house money. Everybody expected them to be bad. Everyone expected them to be, bottom dwelling. They're not. They're thriving. They know what they're doing, and they have no fear when they play. They are going to come after you every single game, and they have tools to play a lot of different styles of basketball. They're not going to be the most, stingy when it comes to turnovers. They're not going to be the most disciplined when it comes to fouls. They're not going to be the greatest percentage shooting team, but they are going to give their all, scratch, claw, bite, whatever it is to get the dub. And that's why I like watching how teams play them, because it tells you a lot about a team. It's really easy for a higher ranked team to go in against a lower ranked team and say, we're going to blow them out. And then we're going to kind of ease off a little bit and let it coast. You do that against a Chicago, you're going to get beat. You do that against a team that wants to prove something, make a statement win out of normal games, you are going to lose. And so I judge teams very much on how they play Chicago. What happens in that game? Are you able to withstand that high energy, high octane game that they play all 40 minutes? And if you can do that, I'm impressed. If you can't do it and you split your games, Seattle, I'm looking at you, I start to get a little bit worried. It shows me lack of consistency. It doesn't matter if you win on a last second shot, but I want to see you be able to take on this team in Chicago, because I think they're a really intimidating team. Look, they have their weaknesses, but they're a team that's going to do some stuff that other teams don't want to face.
I think they struggled to end halves. They struggled to end games, fourth quarter, and that's completely reasonable and expected for a team that is new in its makeup and has so many young players out there trying to learn what does it take to win in this league and play a complete 40 minutes. How do we close out games? Can we stay composed in the final 4 minutes? And that's completely normal. It's not a knock. Those are just growing pains this team is going to have to go through. But yeah, I mean, I've really enjoyed watching this team. They've got to continue to stay the course. They've got to continue to get in the film room and learn about each other. And again, those lulls that they have in periods of the game where they're turning the ball over and things get really sloppy and really ugly and teams go on a run. That's where they struggle the most. But again, I'm not surprised by it. They also aren't fazed by that. They're going to go out any given night and give you their best shot. Let's talk Indiana Fever. Obviously a team, arguably, I think, that has the most eyes on it this year in terms of being on national TV, and just the exposure this team gets, which, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, this is a team who's been in a lottery for like the last, 5 years? So it's not like the expectation was they were going to come out here and be contenders. But I think you have to keep in mind their start to the season. The league did not do this team any favors. I mean, my God, absolutely thrown to the wolves to start the regular season. But the Fever have come together a little bit. They've won they're 6-4 in their last 10 games. You can tell this team's starting to gel a little bit. You can tell Caitlin Clark is getting way more comfortable out there in her own skin, out there on the floor. Leah Boston, I love their connection and their dynamic. But I mean, they're 7th in the standing. When was the last time we talked about the Indiana Fever being in that type of position? It's been a long time.
Yeah, you probably know the exact date, hour, and whatever since that last happened. No, I completely agree. The Indiana Fever, they're getting their footing. I think you're starting to see the glimpses of what we think this team could be. You're starting to maybe question what players are needed when this team takes that next step, and so on and so forth. I'll be blunt. The Indiana Fever, we've been at the doorstep of change so many times. It's time to kick down the door. I need to see something in this second half that tells me that this team is going to take a stride forward. I don't even care if they don't make the playoffs, honestly. And I'll say that.
I do. I think it's embarrassing. Not embarrassing. It's disappointing if they don't make it this year. It's time to be that. And it's going to be not to cut you off, it's going to be an absolute dogfight like it is every single year. That those final 7, 8, 9 teams in the standings just jockeying for position. And I do think the Fever, in my opinion, if they are not in the playoffs this year, was a failure. It's time. It's time to take that jump. I think that they should barely make it. If they're that 8th team in, okay, then you're out of this damn lottery that everyone is so, accustomed to seeing. And I think they've got the talent on this team. The question is, how is this team, being managed? How are these players, continuing to get better throughout the course of the season, and what kind of adjustments are they making? Sorry, finish your thoughts.
No, you're right. I'm with it. I would say, even looking at it though, now that I look at the standings, it would be disappointing because you're talking about the Sparks, Washington, and Dallas, who are so far behind, right? All those teams only have 5 wins. Indiana's sitting at 9. To give up that much of a head start to some degree in the second half would be a disappointment, no question about it. I think this is the perfect segue. We're not going to dive fully into it, Rachel, because we want to wait for the right time. We can have a whole episode on it. People keep dropping us, do a whole episode on Chelsea Gray, do a whole episode on this. We're obviously going to do a whole episode on awards. I think Rookie of the Year would be a great one for us to have just a ridiculous long battle argument about, because I'm sure we're going to agree on some things and disagree on other things. Let me just read off some stats for you, okay? One player, 16 points a game, 6 rebounds, 7.5 assists, and a steal and a half in a game, per game. The other player, 14 points a game, 12 rebounds a game, 2 assists, and a steal and a half in the game. What we're talking about are 2 players that are excelling in what they're doing. They have found success. They are setting records. One of them sets the record for the most double-doubles consecutively in WNBA history. That's WNBA history, okay? Angel Reese is doing amazing things. Caitlin Clark is doing amazing things, getting the first ever triple-double by a rookie. These are amazing things. We are seeing greatness before us. We are seeing the next generation come up before us. The thing I don't like, and I'll throw this out there, is this polarization. I saw somebody put out having them share the Rookie of the Year award. Let me make something clear. You never thought you'd hear this from me, Rachel. I hate sharing awards. Give it to one person. But I'm going to say this, at this point right now, I get the argument for it. I'm not saying it needs to be. I think it will come down to the votes. I think there's going to be a lot of disagreements and arguments and anger about if one of them wins it, if neither of them wins it, if someone else, Verkia Jackson, jumps through the polls, if somebody else steps up and has a crazy season. All I'm saying is we're witnessing greatness. There are arguments to be made for both of them. Both of them are doing great things. And the second half of the season is only going to get better with both these players having some rest time, neither of them being on Team USA. I think we're going to see more records be broken by these 2 players in the second half of the season. And honestly, I think the head-to-head matchups, right or wrong, might be the deciding factor for the Rookie of the Year. So, Rachel, I don't want you to tell me who your Rookie of the Year is, because I don't want to give in to that, clickbaity whatever. But talk to me about the greatness you've witnessed from Clark and Reese.
I mean, this is why the league is so fun right now. It's why there's so many eyes on the league right now. It's why there's so much buzz and chatter. Is not just, okay, these players that came from college who are bringing this momentum. Yes, they're bringing this momentum from college, but now they're transcending the popularity of the game with their play on the court. And you've got Team Angel, you've got Team, Cameron Brink, you've got Team Caitlin. I'm sitting here just as a fan, a former coach, a former player myself, and every single night I get a chance to watch these women play. I'm just blown away at what they're doing out on the court as rookies. And it's so impressive because, thank God I don't have to vote right now. It's going to come down to the wire, in my opinion, and everyone's going to have their metric, and that's what's going to be so fun. Is this, in my opinion, right now the MVP race it's pretty clear. There's no one is going to be surprised. Is there an MVP race right now? Not at all. It's Asia Wilson. Could that change? Maybe. Does someone else, does Brandon Stewart or someone else come out here and start going on a tear? Okay, maybe. But it's pretty clear right now. The chatter and the buzz is the Rookie of the Year race. And this is 2024 WNBA. This is going to be the story of the 2024 WNBA season. And people are going to be pissed. People are going to be happy. You got fan bases. Everyone. So I think it's pretty cool that we're witnessing this and we get to sit back and watch them play night in and night out. And one night Angel Reese, consecutive doubles and goes off and has, 27 and 10. And you're like, oh man, okay, my needle might be leaning that way. And then the next night, Caitlin Clark gets the first ever triple double for a rookie in WNBA. I mean, it's like blow to blow, back and forth every single night. I think it's really going to come down to the wire, and it's super exciting. It's fun. I'm shout out to these women and the pressure and the eyes and everything that's on them, and to being able to perform in this moment. I hope that everyone can take a step back and just enjoy this. This is amazing. Where the game is at right now is amazing, and I don't want us to lose sight of just enjoying watching them in their craft play at the level that we're playing. This doesn't happen every year, two rookies, and there's a whole host of others that are having great seasons. We talked about Rickea Jackson, we talked about Cameron Brink, but like especially Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark, and just the level that they're playing at with the pressure and the eyes that are on them. I mean, this is a moment in time I think we're going to remember for forever.
Yeah, and you said a lot of positive things, so I'm gonna have to throw some shade real quick. I'm just gonna throw some shade at the people who want to decide the Rookie of the Year now. Stop with this. We're 20 games in. We're halfway through the season. We know who the Rookie of the Year is. No, we don't. I'm sorry, right? We've seen greatness from both of them. You could think Angel Reese is the number one Rookie of the Year right now. You can think Caitlin Clark is the number one Rookie of the Year right now. Heck, you could think Kate Martin is the number one Rookie of the Year right now.
Let them talk about it. Let them argue.
I'm all for the excitement, but I'm going to call out stupidity when someone's trying to tell me 20 games into the season, this is the Rookie of the Year. Nah, we got a whole second half. You don't pick an MVP of the Commissioner's Cup after the first half. You don't pick an MVP after the first half. You wait for the completion of the season. Yeah. Then we talk about the Rookie of the Year, the MVP, and all those things. Even though Angel Reese, far in between, has to be MVP as of now. That's what I'll say.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, whatever. Well, you know what, Rachel? Next episode.
I'm not doing it.
The whole episode where
I don't know. That's the honest truth. I don't know. I don't have to know. That's the beautiful thing. I don't have to decide that right now. I get to just watch and observe and study. And then eventually when I need to decide, I will decide. But right now I'm just enjoying it and I'm studying this. Real quick question for you before we really log off. I know we've got All-Star coming up. Who's your pick for All-Star MVP?
Ooh.
I know you haven't thought about it. I just threw this out of nowhere at you.
I could
go Arike again?
No. I think the Indiana Fever might find a way to get it. Here's the thing. I could see it going a variety of different ways. Team USA going off with Kelsey Plum just going crazy. Look, you always want to go with someone who's going to be shooting it like crazy from deep. Depends how serious America, whatever, Team USA takes it. This is so tough. I don't even know. I
don't know. I have this weird inkling it's going to be Angel Reese. I just have this feeling, but it's also tough to be a forward because the way All-Star games are played. But her ability to rebound the basketball, like she can just go get it. she's gonna
get like 20 rebounds in this game because people are just gonna let it rip. I'm gonna go with Kelsey Mitchell, the craziest. If you know me, you know how crazy of a take that is. But I'm going Kelsey Mitchell.
That's a good take.
The Fever also have a history, right, of some of their lesser known players winning All-Star MVP.
I think you have to favor the guards in an All-Star game in terms of just their balls in their hands, their ability to go get shots. But
look, they can't win MVP in the regular season, so we got to give them All-Star. Rachel, real quick, who's your GOAT?
Tamika Catchings.